One of the things that I found is people post a lot about how I am taking a day, I have no spoons, I have absolutely nothing to give, and I'm just gonna hide in my bed, and this makes me feel like a terrible witch. You're not a terrible witch, you're not a terrible person. You are suffering from an illness. Maybe that's fibromyalgia, maybe that's neuralgia, maybe that's any other kind of invisible or visible physical disability. Maybe that's, chemical depression, chemical anxiety. There's so many different things that could make it impossible for you to get out of bed. Me suggesting something that you can do as a witch in bed is not saying that you should or have to do this. This is what I have done that has helped me. I am aware that sometimes you really just need a day where you're like, nope, I'm just gonna nope.
Right. I usually refer to these as pajama TV days.
Yep.
Where I'm not getting out of my pajamas. I might move far enough to get to the couch and watch TV, and I'm eating Skittles and popcorn, and ice cream.
Occasionally we do this with our friends. We get in all of our friends who are fellow spoonies.
Right.
And I put out basically every kind of candy and junk food that we have in the pantry.
We get six kinds of candy and popcorn and 3 kinds of chips and pretzels, and there's ice cream in the freezer.
And we all hang out in our pajamas
and watch terrible movies.
And
they're terrible movies.
Moving right along. So the very first technique that I found useful actually was inspired by my great-grandmother. I used to have really, really terrible nightmares. I mean, I still do occasionally, but now it's like a once a week to once every couple weeks thing, and Ian's beside me so I can wake him up and be like, I just had the most fucked up dream. He's really good about it. Like, he never complains about being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and when I make, my rounds checking all the locks and stuff, he never teases me about it. So, I used to have them not only every night, but multiple times a night. And my great-grandmother was amazing about it. She would be willing to get up and have hot tea with me or hot chocolate with me basically whenever. She was also one of those old women who'd gotten to the point where she didn't really sleep. Like, I don't know when she slept, other than occasionally she'd doze off in the rocking chair at like 4 p.m. in the afternoon. But, yeah, she was always awake. So...
Right, I kind of worry that we're both headed that direction.
Our insomnia. If you combine our insomnia, then someone is awake in our house all the time. So...
Especially once you include Foss.
Right, especially once you include Foss, because sometimes I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I go downstairs and I'm like, don't you have work at 6? He's like, can't sleep. We don't have the most healthy household, sorry. Anyway, so my grandmother let me watch her make a quilt, and she stitched it together out of pieces of clothing that were worn to protect you from the elements. So leftover jackets, things like that. And she stitched together, so they're called Kantha quilts. They're basically fabrics of different, they're patchwork. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, patchwork quilts.
Patchwork quilts. So she stitched this together, and she said, with every stitch, I'm reinforcing this idea that this is a protective thing. And she let me watch it, and she let me help her make it, like cut the fabric squares out. And she said, this will protect you from cold. This will protect you from the elements. And people are silly. They think the elements are only in this world. But the elements of fear, the elements of nightmares, the elements of discord and tension, those are everywhere in the realm which we've nicknamed soul stuff, or prima materia if we're being fancy. And she let me help her make this. And then at night, she'd lay it over me and be like, now you are protected from the elements of the other worlds. Whether they bring you fear or nightmares or tension or guilt or worry or stress or strife, you are protected. And every night she'd kind of layer a new word on there. She was a really big fan of the thesaurus. We used to play Scrabble in 3 languages.
Which is a little bit weird because the distribution of letters is designed for English, but we'll ignore that.
Yeah, it was a little hard, especially for Hebrew. Anyway.
I don't need vowels, more Y's!
I need more J's. For Romanas, I need more J's. Anyway, so every night she layered this idea on me, and it started to be that I had one nightmare a night, and then I had one nightmare every couple days, and then by the time I was 18, it was down to about one a week. And yes, some of that was my internal journeying and the meditations I did and confronting my fears, but some of that was in knowing someone had laid the effort, the work of protecting me on top of me. Now, if you have depression, the idea of making a patchwork quilt, yeah.
Probably not going to happen. Although you may have the kind where your hands are just doing stuff and your brain is just...
Ian has the brain-powered down version, but his hands still sometimes like to be active. If that's yours, then go ahead and feel free to borrow that idea. What I did when I was going through severe depression was take the idea and do a much less labor-intensive version of it.
Well, much less physically labor-intensive version.
Right. I turned my bed into an altar. And I consecrated the 4 corners of my bed as an altar to the manifestation of safety. I made my bed the safe space. So this is going to require a little bit of background work, and I'm gonna run you through it really quick. I work with archetypes and manifestations way more often than I work with gods. I tend to pick fights with gods. If you've ever attended one of our seances...
And angels.
Yeah.
That was epic.
I still kind of want to hear a transcript of that one.
I tend to be irreverent and disrespectful. I don't bow very well. I don't worship very well. If you do, and you have a god or a goddess or whatever term you want to use, a spirit, a power, an entity, a being,
that's working with you.
You know, I understand you're trying to fiddle, but it's making your head really strange on the video.
I'm also trying to clean the wax off of that.
Yeah. It's just you had really big forehead going on.
And the table was wiggling, so the camera was...
So,
Okay. I have stopped.
Thank you. So, when I did it, I worked with what I call the manifestation. So it touches on an idea that I found is called the collective unconscious. That's not the term I grew up with it as, but okay. I grew up learning this as the universal story, the universal song, the universal spell, but collective unconscious works just fine. The idea is that every person has a personal universe, and that personal universe has no separation between it and the greater universe. The separation is an illusion. So each person shapes the universe. And what you can do is find the places where all these ideas kind of collect together. What everyone thinks of love, what everyone thinks of hate, what everyone thinks of safety, what everyone thinks of security, what everyone thinks of...
Although, man, there can be some variance within it.
Yeah. What I was taught growing up is that the more versions you learn from interacting with other cultures and interacting with other people, the more you can access of this story. So you can only touch the parts of it that you know exist, so learn as many as you possibly can. So one of the pledges that I made to walk the path I walk in my tradition is to always keep learning, to learn as many stories as possible.
I just want you to know that I have a wishbone theme in my head right now.
I loved Wishbone. I'm sorry, we digress a lot. So, as we're as I was doing this, what I was calling down was the manifestation, the idea of safety, security, stability in as many stories as I knew. And like a house or a shelter that gives you security and safety, I gave it four corners, the four corners
Yeah.
of my bed. And I gave it a roof, my blankets. And I gave it a floor, my mattress. And I built this concept in my mind through a technique that we are going to do a separate video on, but I'll touch on really quickly. It's called mental mirroring.
Yes.
Which is basically, the thing is the thing. A house has four corners. The bed has four corners. The four corners are the same. The house has a roof. The roof is the blanket. These are the same. The thing is the thing. You figure out the ways that what you're trying to build with your mind are mimicked in reality, or not reality.
Physical matter.
Yeah, the analog world.
Actually, so I'm gonna take it one step past that.
Please do.
Because you can do this between two magical concepts as well. You find the congruencies between what it is that you are constructing or operating upon and what it is that you are trying to mirror, copy, or invoke properties of. And you make it so that through those congruences, this takes on the properties of this.
Right. Now, if you're doing this in ceremonial magic, this is the law of sympathetic connection.
Law of sympathy.
Yeah,
Occasionally the law of contagion gets thrown in.
Right. If you're doing this from the skeptic's corner, then I am doing a psyche exploration technique.
Using mnemonic devices based on similarity.
Right. If you are looking at this from like the physics end of magic, then basically you can look at any of the experiments that two things once connected, even by the mind, are always connected.
And you're connecting them.
And you're connecting them. You're the bridge. So just by conceiving of these things as being connected, so they are connected. I don't really care whether you're looking at it from a string theory perspective or you're just observing out of curiosity or you're in the skeptic's corner. It doesn't really bother me. Yeah.
Right.
So I built an altar to the concept of safety. And what I would do when I would retreat to this space is recharge my sense of being safe. But this is because my depression sprung from feelings of being out of control and unsafe. My life had been threatened. My ability to keep my child had been threatened. So safety was a huge issue in my depression. It may not be in yours. Yours may be, I need to recharge.
Right. In which case you would make it a place of recharging, a place of restfulness, a place of renewal.
So instead of, I'm such a terrible witch, I'm just laying in bed all day. I'm not a terrible witch. I am laying on my altar to safety.
And yes, you may need a day with a couple of spoons to be able to construct the altar.
So
If you are really in a state where you do not have any spoons ever, please let someone who cares about you take you to see a mental health professional.
also, reach out and get help. When I was at the point when I was a child where I had no spoons to deal with it, I had no idea what was going on with me. I was having nightmares twice a night. I wasn't sleeping. My grandmother helped me. That didn't make me a bad student. That didn't make me a bad apprentice. Accepting help from my teacher made me a good apprentice. So, all right. That's the first technique. When Ian started joining me in the bed, this became a problem. And he slept next to me for almost a year before he finally was like, what the fuck is up with your bed? It's constraining, and I forget all the words you use.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been a while.
But basically, he had slept in what felt like to him a hostile, caging environment. And finally was like, question mark, what's going on here? So
And stubborn.
together,
Yeah.
we adjusted it for a kind of safety that we could both agree on. Ian and I both agree that darkness is a place of comfort and safety where no one can see you, no one can judge you, no one can find you. You can share all your secrets, and all there is to receive it is darkness. So we literally changed the color of all of our bedding to reflect this concept, and rebuilt the altar to darkness as a place of restfulness and safety. It took about a week altogether, and part of that was picking out the blankets and things.
Although we're going to be shifting our, at this point it's fixed enough energetically, the fact that we're going to be getting rid of our black comforter and
right, it shouldn't matter.
shouldn't matter at all.
Plus, we're getting a black and blue cantha quilt, like it works with the theme
I'm
anyway.
so happy.
My altar, by the way, my bed altar, and then my actual altar to my ancestors and the altar for everything else is about 2 feet from my bed. So literally on the days where I'm like, I can roll out of bed and shuffle to my altar. So I made it so there's not a lot of distance between the two, specifically because of that.
For your bed altar, do you add any decorative correspondence elements, or is
Oh,
it
you
just
can.
neutral and coloring?
Right now we have a catching wheel patterned as a star above our bed, and no, we have the headboard that I painted. But again, the more you complicate it, the more spoons you're going to need the day you do it.
Okay,
Yeah, and you can add on to it as you go as well.
that's the next question.
Is it alright if it's a little cluttered? I've got stuff laid all across
Yeah.
my
Some people find clutter very soothing. I don't, because OCPD. Ian does. So,
I go both ways. My room is a mess, but I'm blind to it.
to each their own. My grandmother didn't feel safe in a bed unless she put glass jars as the post of the bed went down into a glass jar, and she put essential oils that repelled scorpions, spiders, and rats on the lip of her glass jar. And she did not feel safe unless those were on the beds. She did it to Alexander's crib when Alexander was little too. She grew up in the Ozarks and the Appalachian Mountains, and there's all kinds of nasty, brutal things that will attack beds. And so she did that. And for her, that was both a magical action and a physical action of protection. And the thing is the thing. So in taking the physical step, she also took the magical step.
Nice.
Yeah. So to each their own. I don't have the glass jars. I do get my house sprayed with green bug repellent. So,
Little column A, little column B.
yeah. Alright, so that's the first technique. The second technique I'm going to go over is, okay, you managed to get out of bed, and now you have to shower. I've been in that place where the fact that my hair is matted and I know that I stink, it doesn't matter. I'm not getting out of my comfy sweatshirt, I'm not getting out of my sweatpants. The most I can do physically is get my feet into my slippers. I've been there. So we're actually going to start with the comfy clothes. People talk a lot about a witch's robes and a witch's hat as sort of, when I put this on, it is pre-charged and it has these magical elements to it, and I did something under the new moon on the hill, or I did something with these herbs, or I smoked it over these coals, or whatever. And they use that only for times when they feel powerful, when they want to feel powerful, when they're stepping into their authority as a witch. You can totally do this to literally every piece of clothing you own. I have. Every piece of clothing I own has a different thing that it embodies for me and that I've charged it for. Fabric is a big part of my craft. It's kind of a problem with owning Haven Craft, because I get asked a lot oh, what gender is the stone? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't do gendered stones. But I can tell you what every single garment color would mean in my tradition. Now, colors are one of those things that is very singular to a tradition. I'll give you an example. The culture I grew up in, black is not the color of death, white is. So that's why the death figure behind us is dressed all in white.
Yes, for those of you who aren't aware, that's a death figure.
So, yeah, occasionally that falls down, by the way. So if you ever see the death figure like, "Ah!" I'm not dying. It just falls. So, every piece of clothing I own is woven through with things. And I've done that with my quote-unquote depression clothing too. And I absolutely have pieces of clothing that I wear when I'm depressed. They get cleansed pretty often. Because I've noticed that if I only wear a piece of clothing when I'm depressed, pretty soon, touching it, it feels like depression. It feels gummy and heavy. So I cleanse things pretty often. But like there's a sweatshirt of Ian's that I steal.
Is that the Cappadocia one?
Yeah, the Cappadocia one, when I'm not feeling very well. He doesn't even wear it anymore, but in my head it has to be Ian's because I'm putting Ian around me to make me feel better. So it's on his side of the closet, even though he doesn't wear it anymore.
I don't wear it anymore because it doesn't get cold enough here to warrant it.
I freeze. So.
3 seasons of babies. Normal. The sun is a deadly laser. Really cold.
Yep. So.
Yeah.
So as you're weaving things into clothing, you can make your depression robe something that recharges you or makes you feel safer or makes you feel more secure. You can layer that in. Again, you're going to have a spoon day to do that. But you can do it while you're doing your laundry. And in fact, that's often how I do mine. I used to, I haven't been lately because I've just been so swamped and so sick, make my own laundry detergent. It was cheaper, and it let me toss in whatever magical ingredients that I wanted to. But you can very easily add 2 drops of essential oil to your cup of detergent. Thank you. As you're going, so that you can make the clothing that you wear for depression be healing and comforting and soothing. Now, again, please look up the contraindications of any essential oils you are using, even if it is just for aromatherapy. There are ones that can have severely detrimental effects on your health. For example, hyssop, if you have a history of any kind of depression or epilepsy or seizures, can actually trigger seizures and respiratory distress. So keep in mind that you really need to look into that. My scents are very personal to me. I find the scent of copal and frankincense very soothing, whereas a lot of people find them to be empowering. So I find that the scent of cedar reminds me of my grandmother and so is protective and comforting, whereas some people says that it reminds them of mothballs and gives them a headache. Obviously, I'm not going to rattle off the associations of all of these herbs because I think it's personal. So you use the ones that work for you if you use this technique, and please do your research and make sure it's not going to make you worse. But when you put something into water, you can use water to either strip out things or put things in. Water is fantastic for that. Think about what water does in nature. It's already an element that brings things to you and takes things away from you, that breaks things down or builds things up, depending upon what kind of water you're looking at. Washing machine can work the exact same way. So say that I'm cleansing my depressive clothing, well then I'm going to put slightly different essential oils into my detergent, and I'm going to think of the water as stripping away and breaking down the elements that I want gone. So I might think of, the ocean and its giant recycling ability. if I'm trying to layer in a concept, then I'm going to think of the spiraling in the washer as building and building and building, the same way a stream will build up the silts and the rocks and perfect those rocks until they're shiny and smooth. So again, it's a mental mirroring thing. You can switch it either way. Now I've taken my clothing and made it a thing my mind recognizes as, oh, this is what I put on when I don't feel secure. This is what I put on when I'm unhappy with my body, when I'm unhappy with my life, when I'm unhappy with how few spoons I have. And it's not going to give me very many extra spoons, but just that tiny little oomph might get me to the couch today instead of the bed. And some days all you need is the one day where you make it to the couch, and the next day you can make it out the front door. So,
You said you add scents to your laundry when you're making your own soap. Can you add those scents to, say, a commercial brand, and say it's like I use Gain right now,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's really smelly. But if I add lavender but can't smell the lavender,
your
is it
brain
still
still knows you did it. I tend not to add a great deal. Something you can also do, so my grandmother hated putting perfume on her skin. It made her itch wherever the perfume was. She had incredibly sensitive skin. So she would take tiny snippets of silk handkerchiefs and she'd pin it inside her lapel with whatever scent that she wanted on it. And she said when she did this was similar to when I would put essential oils through my whole clothing. She had different colors of handkerchief and different scents for different days. Rose when she just kind of felt like herself. Frankincense when she wanted to be motivated. And, you know, my uncles called it snake oil. And were like, that doesn't do anything, but it did something for her. And just the act of taking that little piece of silk and pinning it into her lapel was a spell that she could do every day. And all she had to do was prep it on a day that she had more spoons. You know, one day, cut out all the squares. One day, make it to the supermarket, buy your safety pins. One day, put the essential oils on each of your squares. And then all you have to do is pin it in place. By the way, this is a great way to wear perfume if you can't tolerate it on your skin. Some people pin them right here. Some people, Grandma put hers right here. Obviously, please don't yell at me if the safety pin puts a hole in your clothes. That's what safety pins do.
tuck it in your bra or
Right, tuck it in your bra or whatever. Okay, so now we're past the I'm wearing my comfort clothing and towards the shower. I never take a bath to get clean. I take showers to get clean. This is part of a purity code that I pledged to follow when I was younger, where I must always bathe in non-stagnant water. I must always clean myself in water that is not stagnant, but I can sit in water for healing or soothing pain. So baths are for healing and showers are for cleaning in my tradition. That may not be in yours. I do caution that if you possess a vagina and you do take a bath, you may want to rinse afterwards. They can cause UTIs. So, UTIs and vaginal infections. So that's just
chemical
a thing.
burns if you don't do it right.
Right, chemical burns if you don't do it right. Especially, oh my gosh, Tumblr will tell people to just like dump bottles of essential oils into their bath water, completely unblended into a carrier oil or anything else. And it's like, well, I hope that sensitive areas of your anatomy don't come in contact with a glob of oil in water, because by the way, those don't mix. That being said. So when I am in my depressed state, I tend to take a bath when I want to break through what's making me feel depressed, when I know it's situational. A bath is for meditating, confronting what's causing me depression, picking a path where I feel I do have power, which we've talked about in other cunning classes, how to sort what you fear and your doubts and your confusion and your upset into what's real and what's false. Those are under the class labeled fear and cunning. So I'm not going to go into that now. but I'm going to talk about the cleansing effect of showers. I see people on Tumblr posting all the time, oh, the simplest cleansing method is to just hop in the shower. You're not wrong. But I haven't yet seen anyone talk about using this as a meditation technique when you have depression. In fact, the primary meditation technique that I see people recommending, I personally think is rather unhealthy. I see them recommending the blank mind. Just blank your mind so you can escape from everything. Even setting aside, like, okay, say they can achieve that with no spoons and suffering from depression. Let's say that they can, which would be difficult. What happens when they come back from it? They didn't use it to sort, they didn't use it to recharge, just to be blank. They're just gonna fall right back into it. It's going to be waiting when they come out of it. So now they've used some of the few spoons they have to struggle into a difficult thing to achieve, even if you've been practicing meditation for years, only to fall right back into misery when they come out of it. So no, that's not the technique I would recommend. So we were talking about using a shower as a technique of meditation to help with depression. Specifically, I want to talk about a physical sensation caused by depression. There's a sensation that every person I've ever met who suffers from depression has described to me using slightly different words. If you don't have this, I'm so happy for you. It doesn't mean that I'm saying you don't suffer from depression. It's almost a kind of dysphoria where your body feels disgusting, heavy, miserable, unpleasant to be in. I've heard someone say scubby, yucky, gross,
Sluggish.
thick, sluggish.
You feel like you're 400 pounds heavier.
Right, exactly. I use a shower as a means of stripping off this dysphoria. And please know, I am not saying this is 100% effective, because it is not 100% effective for me. It helps me a great deal, though. Presupposing I can get enough spoons to get into the shower, I wash with activated charcoal and salt. Things that attract negativity, things that cleanse, things that strip off. And while I'm doing it, I do a meditation on how water breaks down, how water strips away. And what I'm doing is I meditate on the water literally breaking down that dysphoria, pounding it off my skin, and stripping it off of me. And I watch as it goes down the drain. Now, I talked with my mental health professional that I was seeing when I was suffering from my worst depressive period about this technique. And he was like, oh yeah, it's just a kind of mindfulness therapy, you know. So if you want to look at this from the skeptic's corner, you can go to a mental health professional and get the same techniques without the magic. And that's perfectly acceptable. You know, that's not a problem. In fact, if that works for you, I would encourage you to do that. Ian, I know you do a slightly different meditation than I do in the shower. Although you used to use peppermint essential oil.
Yeah.
And yours was more in the, I will be invigorated to pull myself out of this.
Yeah, I actually use...
While you're
Okay.
talking.
Mine is two parts. I use the water and I use the steam.
That's too loud. I'll open them after class.
The water is essentially, I feel it almost sluicing off my emotional state. I push how I'm feeling to the surface along with the scubbiness on my body and along with sweat and whatever else, and let it be washed away. And I let the steam come up and I breathe it in. And with
So yours is
and with
almost
the
like a
peppermint.
yoga
Yeah.
meditation with the...
Mine is closer to a yogic meditation where as I breathe out, I'm pushing the stuff I don't want out to the surface of my body where it's carried away by the water, and as I breathe in, I'm breathing in the steam.
And the peppermint
And the peppermint
and the rose and the...
and breathing in sort of the energy and the invigoration.
Yeah.
Um,
By the way, when I first moved in with Ian, I didn't know his soap had peppermint essential oil in it. It was a fun morning. Yeah. Ian heard
She's never-
a really loud shriek from the bathroom. So
She's never gonna let me live that one down.
this taught me, by the way, to
She
smell
didn't
my
smell the
soap
soap.
before I use it. So yeah, not Ian's fault. I'm used to soap that says peppermint being like the scent oil, not
right, being
the
light peppermint
yeah.
rather than peppermint essential oil mixed with Castile soap.
Yeah. It was a fun morning. I was very awake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could have been worse. I could have been using black pepper oil soap.
Right, or it could have been, so I did martial arts. Actually, I'm still doing martial arts. I've done martial arts
Tiger
for
Balm?
years and years and years and years. Seriously, be careful with Tiger Balm.
Yeah.
Although, that's an interesting bit of scent technique that I use. I associate the smell of Tiger Balm with times that I have felt the most in control of my body, of myself, of how I felt day to day. So I will literally put on Tiger Balm when I feel powerless, and it helps me feel more powerful. It's kind of like my lucky pair of socks. Everyone's got their thing. I keep my toilet very clean. The reason for this is that I will sit in my towel on my toilet because I have a teeny tiny bathroom and there is no room for any kind of seating. If you have seating, you know, use that. So I sit, and I've been asked before why there's a phone charger in my bathroom. This is why. I put on a playlist. I weave magic through music. Honestly, it's probably the magic I use the most often. We've talked so far about how I use scent and different herbs and fabric, but music is my biggest one. If I was going to say what I use every moment, it's music. Right.
Playlist music.
Now, when I have a lot of spoons, I have a magical circle that I have painted onto the ground. Actually, I have one in a couple different places, but I'll just refer to one for now. That comes out of cunning and clever work. That's where the symbols come out of. And it's painted in this goop. I don't really know the right word. Would you call that goop? Because it's not paint.
The black stuff?
The black stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's goop.
Pervasive goop.
It gets everywhere. That is a combination of India ink, black charcoal, black salt, and powdered charred bone. And I put this down and I paint my symbols, and then I'll sit there and I'll play a song and I'll mirror it mentally and I'll weave a spell inside myself that is supposed to trigger when I listen to the song. So that's a huge part of my daily practices. And what I do when I'm spoonless and like the idea of brushing my teeth is too much, which is weird for me because oh my gosh, teeth cleanliness is a huge thing for me. So the days where I'm like, I don't even want to brush my teeth, I know that something's wrong. I will sit and play my playlist, my like, I Can Do It, I can, and specifically, I listen to the song by Super Chick, Go One More. And it's basically the lyric repeating over and over again, go one more step, go one more step. And I'll motivate myself, okay, all I have to do is brush my teeth. That is the only thing I'm asking of myself in this moment. I am asking one more thing, brush my teeth. And then it's okay, I brushed my teeth. I can go one more, I can get dressed. Okay, I did that, I can go downstairs. Okay, I can make my coffee. And so yeah, that's why there's a, so it's set up so that I have my charger and my phone away from the water. And a mirror. And my little round mirror is a way of sort of staring at myself and castigating myself into moving. That's probably not a healthy technique. Don't mimic that. Anyway, so once I get dressed in my clothing that on spoony days I charged, and I get downstairs, my next step is my coffee. I don't make my coffee, Ian does. I don't know what I'm gonna do because Ian's starting a new job, and he's gonna be on camera a lot less. With America's shitty healthcare, we need one that comes with health insurance because there's something wrong with my heart. So he won't be on camera as much. But he makes my coffee for me every morning. And we make the same joke, and you've probably seen it if you're on any witchcraft community, that it is a, I know I'm a witch because every morning I drink a magic potion made of beans and it brings me back to life. But that's become a little mantra to me. That's become a little spell. That this is literally my potion for coming back to life. Now we have a very inexpensive espresso machine in our house. And the reason for this is that we have found that the volatile oils in coffee beans actually affect my depression and my anxiety. They affect my fibro too. And this is something that people are literally studying. There's a volatile oil that is expressed from coffee beans in espresso that is not expressed from them in coffee.
So like the pre-ground buy at the store, dump in a coffee pot coffee?
Yeah. And now that we understand this, we understand my insane craving for espresso. It can actually help with a lot of the things I have going on with me. Fibromyalgia, migraines, etc. Now, some people with migraines react the opposite to that essential oil that's released from espresso beans, and it actually triggers migraines. So, be careful with that. You may be towards one end of the spectrum or the other. I'm towards the end where it helps with mine. So I know I am literally drinking a magical potion that is going to help me feel better. So all I do is I layer a little bit of extra charge into that. I take what it is already and I amplify it. This is going to help me feel better. This is going to make me feel like I can get up and walk out that front door. And I take some time with my coffee. I get up a lot earlier than I'm due in the store because I want my hour, and I'm not kidding when I say an hour, sitting over my coffee and drinking that as a spell that I ingest every single morning before I walk out the door. I know that some people have to get up a lot earlier for their jobs, and the idea of getting up any earlier than they already do is impossible. One thing that I've seen that I found really fascinating and was considering doing myself, but I already have mugs that are layered with certain intentions. So, okay, I'll give you this one. In the tradition I grew up in, orange is the color of vitality. It's the color of primal energy. And I have a giant orange coffee mug that says, "The universe knows." And this was a joke that my best friend and I used to make about a really terrible time I went through where no one knew what I was going through. And he would turn to me and he'd go, "It's okay, the universe knows." And so when I'm sitting there pulling myself out of this morass of depression, I hold my orange vitality cup held with, that has my magic potion in it, that has my phrase on it that reminds me that I can pull myself out of this, and that if nobody knows how hard it is, it's okay. The universe knows. One thing I saw online that I thought was so cool was taking a dollar store mug and the alcohol inks that they sell, the alcohol ink pens that they sell, and putting a magical sigil for health or vitality or wakefulness or any kind of protective symbol of I can get up and I can go on the cup, and then sealing it in with Mod Podge. Now it does mean you have to hand wash the coffee cups, and that may be too much for some people. I actually prefer to hand wash my dishes, but to each their own. But people will put a magical symbol to increase the strength of their coffee, and to turn it into more of a wakefulness, or increase the strength of the tea that they're drinking. Another one I saw was to take chocolate syrup or caramel syrup and draw the sigil into the bottom of your coffee mug and then put the coffee in. I thought that was fantastic. So I know that I've sent some pot shots at Tumblr through this video. but some of the stuff coming off of there is really, really cool. I saw one person had set up a text that would send them an emoji spell for wakefulness every morning, which I thought was neat. You know, the age of technology doesn't have to mean that magic's over, it just has to mean that magic evolves. Anyway, so I sit and I have my coffee in my giant orange mug that says the universe knows, and then the very first thing that happens when I open my front door is I am confronted by my witchy garden. I have a container garden in front of my house. I'm growing everything from black opal basil to devil's trumpet, belladonna, wormwood, etc. And the smell of that garden takes me back to my grandmother. She had, I don't even know how she got some of the stuff she got to grow in Vegas. Because, like, I've tried. I'm not that good of a gardener. And I know that the temperatures have raised since she was out here by, like, 20 degrees. But still, like, I've tried growing it inside, and I still can't get it to grow. Finicky plants. I get that she had, like, 80 years of experience on me, but come on now. So, I also have, you know, the wealth of human information at my fingertips, and I still can't figure out why my Esperanza keeps dying. I can't find what's wrong with it in any gardening guide.
I blame the sun.
Yeah. So, well, it's wilty. But I'm like, I'm not overwatering it, I'm not underwatering it, and it's just kind of droopy, and then it droops until it dies. I'm on my second plant.
Soil testing?
Check and see if you're planting it directly over power lines.
That's a thing too.
Oh, huh. Thank you.
Didn't think about that.
Right, digression that will be very helpful to me, because I would really like to grow Esperanza. I find them cheering. Anyway, just the smell of that garden gets me over my threshold. Because that's where I really struggle. I open that front door, and I'm like, I don't really want to go out into the world right now. I feel like one giant raw nerve coated in a, you know, container of yuck. And I want to step out and check on my garden. And I know that gardens take a lot of spoons, so yours may not be that. Yours may be a really funny mat in front of your door. I have that too. I don't ever use welcome mats, because my grandmother said that if you put a giant sign in front of your door that said welcome, it lessened the power of your threshold to protect you from things, because you were inviting whatever wanted to come in to come in. So I have mats that I buy during Halloween time. Things with like witchy feet on them, or crows or ravens or whatever. So Halloween time is the best. I love home decor buying during Halloween. People are like, oh, are you buying for seasonal decor? No. This is going in my house all year round. Anyway, so I have a friend who hangs a bone mobile outside their house. And when they look at it, they're like, yep, I'm a witch, and witches can do anything, so I can go outside today. And that's their little mantra. Whatever yours is, have something right outside the threshold that gets you over that threshold. Because that is a known psychological thing. This is something that my mental health professional told me about. Is so the same thing that causes you to forget why you came into the kitchen. You know, when you're sitting in the living room and you're like, oh, I need to do this thing in the kitchen. Then you get up and you go into the kitchen and you're like, why am I here? It's called the threshold effect. Your mind knows something in one room and thinks of that as associated with that room. And so when you move into another, it blanks it because it's not associated with that room.
You go back.
And then you go back and you remember. And you can do this 3 or 4 times. I know I have. And I've literally stood with one foot in each room and been like, okay, what do I need to remember when I cross from here? It works for me. So the same thing happens with depression and anxiety, where everything you did to psych yourself up in one room strips off when you go to the next. So that's why you can sometimes make it to the couch, and you're like, oh man, I had all this motivation to get on with my day, and now I'm on the couch and all my motivation's gone. You left it in your bedroom. So I have something that triggers me to get across the threshold and remotivate myself over and over and over again. So, like, if I get down to the couch, I get my coffee. If I go outside, I can smell my garden.
Sheer cussed stubbornness is also an option. But
Sheer cussed stubbornness is also an option, but I don't really recommend it. I'm also a spite-motivated creature, and sometimes I get out of bed just to spite the people who think I'm going to fail.
Including yourself?
Including myself. Yeah. I don't have the healthiest relationship with myself.
I'll compete with myself to hurt myself.
Yeah, myself is like, we're an imposter, and everyone's gonna know, and we're such a failure. And then anytime anyone sends me hate mail and is like, you're not really a witch, I'm like, they know!
Not that you've been doing this most of your life.
Right. The fact that I've been doing this most of my life, and that, like, you can't really be an imposter witch if you say you're a witch, you're a witch. Like...
Which is which?
Yeah, which witch is which? It's the witch that says they're a witch. I can't, that voice is still there saying, it's actually called imposter syndrome. It's a known effect of OCPD, and it's basically if you don't do something perfect all the time, it means you don't deserve to be where you are.
Wow.
Yeah, if I cannot succeed 110% of the time in absolute perfection and with everyone around me having nothing that they can critique me on, then that means I'm a failure and I'm an imposter and I shouldn't be in the position I'm in. So, and it really is like Kirk levels of dramatic, that voice inside my head, like flinging itself against the walls, going, I'm an imposter! And I'm like, shut up!
Like a Disney movie.
Yeah, it's a bad Disney movie. So, sometimes I get up just to spite that voice. I'm like, you are really annoying. Fuck that. I am getting out of bed because you're annoying me. I have an unhealthy relationship with myself. Don't mimic that part of this class.
As I say, not as I do.
Right. I'm telling you the healthier things that I do, please employ those, not the other ones. Like I said, they don't always work, and sometimes I fall back on unhealthy method. Not a great plan. So I used to have something in my car that would also make me happy to be in my car. I hung something from my rearview mirror that kind of inspired me, and then I got pulled over and told that I stole my car. I was wearing the full headscarf and I got a seriously, I think it was actually Islamophobia. They saw headscarf and flipped out. And one of the things they got mad at me about was hanging things from my rearview mirror. So I don't have that anymore, and I've yet to figure out sort of my new thing to get me into the car. Yeah.
So my rearview mirror fell off recently, and I had a cute little
Vegas
dragon
does
with
that.
bells hanging from that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have yet to actually glue it back on, but I've got these handles to get in and out of the car, inside the car, so I just hung my dragon from there. It's technically legal because it's not blocking my view.
Yeah, I will keep that in mind. What I used to do when I would get in and drive it is I would touch it every day, and it was my little talisman. Like, I can do this. It was a gift from my grandmother, and it was the last thing I saw before I got in a really serious car accident. I got in a car accident when I was 17 that very nearly took my life. I still suffer from some of the nerve damage from it. And the last thing I saw and the last thing I thought of was her, because it was hanging right there. And I'm aware that this is not the case, but a part of my brain is like, because I was looking at my talisman, and because I was worried that my grandmother would get a phone call that I was dead, I lived through that. Like, some part of me went, Grandma cannot get a phone call saying I'm dead. That cannot happen. So I have to live through this. So it was sort of I can live through anything. I can hold on and grit my teeth and get through anything. And on all my trips to physical therapy, touched my talisman. And, it lived through the car crash, the car did not. And it followed me from car to car and from stage of life to stage of life. So now I have to figure out what I'm going to do instead. But that was sort of okay, I got over the threshold, I got into the car, there's my talisman. It makes me keep going. I have a friend who told me that their version of this is a bumper sticker that they get on every single car that they own. And theirs is my other car is a Gundam. Because it's, so they're like, this is my armored suit. That means that I can get through anything. And that's how they think of their car, is I can get through all of life's challenges, etc. You may be thinking, okay, well, what happens if I wear the bus? Or wear the bus. You don't wear a bus. You ride a bus.
But they hurt.
Right. I don't think it would fit very well. Have something that goes on your bus bag. Have something that staples to your bus tag. Have something, some kind of a talisman that reminds you, you can get through this. You can take one more step. You can get to work. Again, you're going to have to put it together on a spoony day. Magic doesn't have to be this huge, drawn-out, protracted thing. It can be a charm you touch every day. And it doesn't have to be a pentacle or a goddess figure. I'm not sure where this idea that it had to be a symbol everyone recognizes came from. Where, right, chaos magic, the symbol is whatever the hell you want it to be. But in the system I grew up in, it's also kind of whatever works for you. If you look at colonial witchcraft or Appalachian cunning or clever work or anything in the Ozarks, it's going to be whatever you have on hand that works for you. Don't have powdered egg, use chalk. Don't have chalk, use brick dust. Don't have brick dust, use salts. Don't have salt, use rock salts. Don't have rock salt, use flour. And they're very, you just kind of go through it until you find something that works for you and that you have. And it's something that they recognize because it is an internal thing that empowers them. So yours can be your coffee mug. I have a Society 6 travel mug that's got witchy patterns all over it. That anytime I'm like, oh yeah, I have to like represent witchcraft, when who the fuck can actually represent such an incredibly diverse, incredibly different thing? But I have to go speak at a forum as a witch, knowing that there's no way that I can be the witch pope and represent all of witches. Because there's no such thing. There is no one person who can represent every single tradition of witchcraft out there. It is not possible. But I can sit there and talk about how it's a diverse reflection of different cultures. But what I do is every time I have to go to one of those events, I put my coffee in my witchy, like really overt witchy. It's got like cut off fingers and little vials that say bat's blood and
It's another Halloween treasure.
yeah. And I walk in there holding my witch coffee. This is my witch coffee, and I put it on the table as like, nope, this is my space where I am a witch. So it doesn't have to be something other people recognize as magic for it to help you get one foot in front of the other when you're struggling with depression or imposter syndrome or anxiety or self-doubt or dysphoria. And in fact, I think next class we're going to talk about dysphoria and magic and how to deal with body dysphoria and spiritual dysphoria, because that's something where how do you work as trans or as non-gendered or gender void or gender fluid in a pagan community that is so gender essentialist? So we're going to talk about adjusting ritual and everyday witchcraft to deal with that dysphoria.